is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher! Mother!
Secret lover.
What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
Hey there, folks. This is Screen Watching. It's our new look. We're bigger, we're better, we're sleeker, oh gosh, I mean, it's like a whole new lick of paint on this here podcast. Anyway, my name is Dan Barrett, joined here by Simon Foster. This week, we are not going to just BS our way through a whole bunch of reviews and some ill-conceived thoughts. Well, actually, no, that's not true. We will be BSing our way through reviews and ill-conceived thoughts, but we'll be doing it faster. So, Simon, first of all, I trust you're well.
Hello, Dan Barrett. Hello, Screen Watchers. I am very well. I am very excited by this exciting new phase in the screen watching development. This meaner, leaner, slicker, faster screen watching, which is already blowing out far longer than I expected the intro to. But yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting about what's in cinemas and on TV, what's coming up in cinemas and on TV, and what else you've been watching, which we're hanging on to. Sorry, kids, no birthday quiz this week. I tried, but it's just not going to happen. Let's get on with this.
It was an ill-conceived segment, and we let it run for way too many years. But here we go. Look, so I reckon we dive through this, and we do some TV first, we do some movies, and, we'll play it by ear. But
sure. Here's
the thing. This is what people need to know. This week, the big news show, I would suggest, is a show on Disney+. And big news show, like, treat that a little bit of, whatever it is. It's an Australian drama called Last Days of the Space Age. This is set in 1979 in Western Australia. Anyway, it's centered around two events that are taking place concurrently. One, Skylab has fallen, and it's just landed just outside the town. Yep. And the other thing that was happening was a Miss Universe or something was taking place. I don't know. There's some sort of beauty pageant, whatever. Look, all I will say is if you sit down and watch this one, be prepared for a lot of just silly melodrama. But this commits a lot of, first of all, there's a bunch of production just issues where it's just a little bit too quiet and it's a bit too stilted and it's not really that engaging to watch, even though it's fairly bright and colorful. But just from like a scripting standpoint, it's the kind of production where you find the characters as they're all being introduced and you're being sort of brought into the world of Last Days of the Space Age. It's characters will say something and then it's like a bit of a non sequitur before they really start talking about something a bit more meaningful. And it happens with every single scene. First scene, hey, we really should go on holiday, shouldn't we, as they're driving along? And it's like, yeah, but we're in 6 months now of me striking from my job. And it's like, well, first of all, that's ridiculous. Why are they going on a holiday when they're on strike and they don't have any money coming into the family? And like, maybe that's supposed to be a joke, but you don't know the characters well enough at that point to know that it's a joke. So it's just silly. Cut to a couple of scenes later where Ryder Mitchell's washing her dishes with her dad. And it's like, I say October 25th is the anniversary of Mum's death. And then the father's like, I know, it's on Saturday. And then it's like, you got attacked by the brick that came through the window earlier. And then they start getting angry about that. Just cut to that as the scene. You can have the exposition that the mother died, like, as part of that conversation. It doesn't need to open with that and then have a non sequitur into it. Anyway, it's really tired, it's frustrating, and as a drama, it just feels really flat on the page, even though you've got Ryder Mitchell in it, and she's really charming, as she always is, but...
Big fan of the Ryder.
The rest of it, not so watchable. What is really strangely watchable, though, also on Disney+, and I can't believe I'm saying this, as it's a Ryan Murphy TV series, but Doctor Odyssey, starring Pacey from Dawson's Creek himself, Joshua Jackson. This is absolute cheese. I've watched God knows how many episodes of The Love Boat over the last couple of years. By will, I've sat down with intention to watch The Love Boat, and I've had a grand time. And I'm also having a pretty good time with this. It's not great.
Like this is reference? Not a. Is it a call back to the days of Love Boat? Is it is Gopher and Doc and all that?
It's on a cruise ship. Like it's just the adventures of the Doctor on a cruise ship.
I thought Vanderbeek could grow into sort of the matinee idol good looks, but Joshua Jackson's a good looking guy.
Yeah, people seem to really like that guy. And there's like, I'm not even sure if he's the best thing about it. Don Johnson's in a supporting role playing the ship captain, and anytime he's on screen, I'm kind of a bit more interested. But look, as just, no, he's looking all right. He's got a bit of a facial scruff happening.
Stooping, has he? Okay.
No, it's just get away from the love boat. I'm just saying they're both on boats,
You brought it up.
and I'm willing to open myself up to a lot of cheese. There's a lot of rumors around this show suggesting that we may not actually be watching a love boat, well, a contemporary love boat, but instead characters may actually be dead, and we're watching characters being taken to the afterlife. That's a theory going around, but I didn't see anything in the opening episode that really supported that strong enough for me to really
I
buy
love
into it.
that. That's great. I have a
But
theory, Dan Barrett, and let me raise this very quickly. I have a theory. If you look at everything, every movie or every TV show you watch, and take it as an afterlife drama, everything is much, much more interesting. It takes on a whole new perspective. It's very exciting to do that.
Okay, well, I'll watch that later on with the news. Some other things that may cross your TV screens is there's a American version of Have I Got News for You? This is the UK panel show, which has been running for, I don't know, like 37 seasons or something in the UK. Really long running. It's an American version. It's being made for CNN, and a lot of the problems I have with this are by the fact that it's made for CNN. So CNN news channel, it's a channel which is for people that want to be a bit sort of connected to the news. So why is it that characters are surprised by news stories that are being played ad nauseum on cable news all week?
Sure.
It's just a little frustrating.
Yeah.
And the
We
jokes
watched
on it,
last
not
night.
really great.
Not funny at all. Did not cut it as a comedy, that's for sure.
No, the first episode was the strongest of the three so far. And look, there's lots of little corrections they can make for this to actually really start working. First thing they need to do is get rid of Michael Ian Black, who hasn't been funny for about 30 years on TV.
It's terrible.
That guy sucks. Yeah, he's just awful. Amber Ruffin, I think, has the potential to really break out and do some funny stuff on this, but hasn't really been given the opportunity here because she's sort of stuck to this format that isn't really quite working completely. And then you've got the gentleman hosting whose name, Roy Wood Jr. And Roy Wood Jr., really funny guy, not really holding it together as a host. He's wearing a suit and tie, and that doesn't really quite fit him right.
Very
And
ill-fitting suit and tie too. I remember from last night's episode. Just didn't cut it as a fashion icon.
Yeah. Anyway, it needs a bit of a reworking, but, there's potential for that one. And very quickly, coming up over the next week, Law & Order's back, all the various Law & Orders. I've become a bit of a Law & Order junkie, so I'm surprisingly excited to see this coming back with Maura Tierney as the police captain. She's joining the cast.
Isn't that exciting? She's going through a bit of a Maura renaissance at the moment, a Maura-sance.
Tony-sance.
Renaissance, yeah.
Yeah.
Superman and Lois is bit in Twisters.
Yeah, okay, Simon, we know. Okay, Superman and Lois, it's back for its final season, and there's the debut of HBO's The Franchise, which is from Armando Iannucci, and a parody of all the Marvel superhero films. It's behind the scenes of making one of these shows, and it's not particularly great. No, don't get too excited. And then I'm just going to leave this by saying, next week, Shrinking is back for season 2. That's the Apple TV Plus comedy with Harrison Ford and what's his name? Marshall from
Segel.
How I Met Your Mother. Jason
Segel from the Muppets.
Yeah, from the Muppets. Jesus. Anyway, if you haven't watched season 1 of that show, definitely you need to watch season 1 before you watch season 2. But it's a fun watch. It takes a few episodes to find the vibe of the show, but once they find it, it's really quite watchable. And I'd say my weekly viewing highlight continues to be English Teacher on Disney Plus here in Australia, Hulu in the US. It was funny to start with, and week after week, it's just getting funnier and funnier. I'm really
You are
into that
absolutely
program.
right. I dipped into that on your recommendation, and you're absolutely right. He's a very funny, talented leading man, and the beats between all the characters and the tone and the structure of it is very engaging and very funny. So I concur with the English Teacher thoughts.
Yeah, and it's just getting sharper every week. But Simon, there's some movies that we need to talk about as well. What's happening on the screens?
There are some movies we could talk about. Over on the Paramount Plus, and I think it's playing on one of the Foxtel channels here in Australia, is Apartment 7A. Now, this is a reworking of the Rosemary's Baby story. It's based on the book by Ira Levin.
Well, it's supposed to be a prequel, isn't it?
Well, it's a prequel of sorts. It's the woman, without giving too much away, Julia Garner, yes, plays the woman who is in the big brownstone apartment and being ultimately tormented by her neighbours before Mia Farrow turns up. those who know Rosemary's Baby will have some idea as to where the direction this one heads in. It's a similar story. It goes into some pretty nutty areas because she's a Broadway dancer and snaps her ankle in a very horrid way, but still manages to sort of get up and hoof around on the off-Broadway production of something or other. And it's got some big sort of dancey type sequences in it, which I wasn't expecting from a reworking of the Rosemary's Baby storyline. This is Julia Garner trying to sort of break out of that arty film mold that she's in and very good in at the moment, but she's going for something a bit more mainstream here. It's loopy and it's a bit nutty, but it's kind of fun. Diane Wiest acts up a storm as the neighbour, and it's directed by a young Australian, the lady who did Mimic, who's got a 3-name name, and I can't remember what at all, but she's a talented director who'll do better things in the future. Over on the Netflix, we have a movie called Will and Harper. This is a documentary in which Will Ferrell reconnects with an old friend of his who, for many years, was one of the key creative talents, the head writer, in fact, of Saturday Night Live in those years when Will and Will Forte and Tina Fey and Amy Poehler were all sort of together. Andrew Steele was one of the really off-center creative geniuses at that point in time. Left SNL and went on his own journey of transitioning. He's now Harper Steele. She is still Will Ferrell's best friend, but she decides to go on a cross-country trip and wants to take Will along because he was, as Andrew, he would travel the countryside and explore bars and nightlife and go on camping trips. As Harper, she's a lot more cautious and doesn't know how Midwest America is going to take it. So there's a journey of discovery that she goes on. There's a bit of a peeling back the layers of perception that we all have about the flyover states, and that leads to some really beautiful scenes with people you're not quite expecting to accept Harper. Plus, there's some really emotional moments between two old friends, Will, who's coming to terms with Harper as she is now, and it's some beautiful countryside as well. This is a really winning, heartfelt documentary that I really, really love. You've dropped one in there called Killer Heat. I don't know much about this. You want to have a chat?
Oh, look, nobody knows much about this one, Simon. This is a film that dropped onto Prime Video during the week. It's like a proper marquee title, Simon. It's not just one of the many things that get dropped onto Prime Video. This stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah.
It's got Shailene Woodley, Richard Madden. So like a proper name cast on this. It's basically, it feels like a high-end, like a detective TV drama more than an actual feature film. The premise of it is that you've got a detective who's got, like a private eye detective. He's got a bit of a troubled family history, which they don't really get into that much. And as it unveils the secret as to what he's running away from, it's not actually that interesting. But anyway, basically that's Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He's getting around some fancy facial hair. It's him on the island of Crete in Greece. And what's happened is there's twins, as played by Richard Madden. There's Elias and Leo, I think is the other brother. Anyway, one of them's died. He's fallen off a cliff. He's doing some freehand climbing. That's, without the ropes and stuff. Anyway, who killed him? What was the motivation? Who knows? But he's been hired by Shailene Woodley's character, who's the wife of the deceased climber. And, mystery is sure to ensue over the course of just over 90-odd minutes. 97 minutes.
It's such a generic name, Killer Heat. That sounds like a C release in some video store package back in the mid-'80s.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. I was thinking, while I was watching the movie, which isn't very good. It's like a 2-star film. It's fine, but it's kind of watchable, but it's just not good. I was just thinking about how back in the day there was always we talk about programmers on this podcast a bit, which is just the sort of generic sort of legal thriller or drama, which isn't like the huge blockbuster film, but it does middling business and carries on. But there's also all these other films that get made with some actual stars. And these are films which, they know are just turkeys. And so it kind of gets pushed quietly onto DVD or direct-to-digital or whatever the sort of current mode of getting rid of your trash business is. But in this day and age of streamers, it's so much harder to hide them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When
Anyway, that's kind of what this one
notable
is.
names. Yeah. Okay. So Killer Heat is on Prime Video. Speaking of trash that's disappeared to the streaming platforms, Subservience.
One thing with Killer Heat. If you don't work out what's happened and who the killer is, like within 40 minutes of this movie starting, like, come on, you need to have a rethink about what's happening in your life. Sorry, Simon, go on.
Subservience is a film in which Megan Fox stars as a sexy android.
Okay, hello.
Hello, here we are. As a sexy android who is moving in on the man of the house. Imagine if Rebecca De Mornay's sexy nanny from The Hand That Rocks the Cradle was actually a sexy robot nanny, and you kind of got the vibe of this. I had a good time watching this. It's actually a really good-looking film, not just Miss Fox, who's very attractive, but it's a smartly made movie. It was a theatrical release over in the States, but has Rialto have shunted it straight off to the viewing platforms, home viewing platforms here in Australia. And I do just want to mention very quickly, maybe I've kept it secret all these years, but my favourite horror franchise doing the rounds at the moment is the VHS films. This is the ongoing anthology series of films which, somehow tie together an old cursed VHS tape into a whole lot of different stories. VHS Beyond is the latest. It premieres on Shudder this week. The highlight of the package, and there's some really good stuff in there, is a short, I think it's produced, I don't think he directed it, but it's produced by Justin Long, in which he revisits the themes that he explored in the film Tusk, in which humans are transformed through bone grafting and hideous means into animals. And this has some really nutty stuff in it. VHS Beyond is, if you like the series, and I do, then you'll certainly love this one. Trailer of the week. Speaking of programmers, Juror Number 2 dropped, the latest film from director Clint Eastwood. Nicholas Hoult plays a juror who finds himself on a murder case that he may already know the answer for, because he might have done it, if the trailer is anything to go by. Good cast, J.K. Simmons, Toni Collette, bunch of good people in there. So looking forward to that being released. That's what I've been watching on my screen.
Yeah, going back to Tusk, easily the worst Kevin Smith film, and that says something.
That is really saying something.
Actually, that's really unfair to Yoga Hosers, but certainly one of those two films are the worst movie that is made.
Yoga Hosers was awful. I always remember thinking Tusk was like intriguing and interesting and kind of creepy up till about the 2/3 moment, and then just had one of the worst sort of last half hours of a film in cinema history. So yeah, really, and that's saying something.
Yeah, look, I'll give it that. It was definitely intriguing and like a little bit creepy, and then about 30 seconds in, I kind of realised what I was up for. But anyway, Simon, before we get out of here, I'm just going to say I did watch for the first time in my life during the week Night of the Comet, this being the mid-80s. I didn't actually even know what the movie was about. I knew it had a bit of a reputation as a bit of a VHS classic. I watched it. I don't really understand the enthusiasm that people have for this movie. I just don't get it.
Me neither. It's junk. It's total junk, which seems to have found a little bit of love. I was going to program this at one of my sci-fi festivals a couple of years ago because of that internet sort of support for it, that kind of online buzziness about it. And then I watched it and I thought, this is just junk.
Yeah,
so I totally get it.
It fails as being a horror. It fails as being a teen comedy. It fails as... surprisingly not. I've just been very, regimented in terms of scheduling some stuff in. There were so many better things I could have watched during my week than Night of the Comet, and yet I made that 90-minute dedication. Mercifully, it only goes for 90 minutes, which is pretty great.
Yeah, it's a strange film. Catherine Mary Stewart.
I just don't understand it. I guess maybe sort of notable in that film is, and I've just forgotten the name of the actor in it, is the male lead who doesn't actually get a whole lot of screen time in a film either. But notably, he went on in Star Trek Voyager to be one of the leads in that, playing Chakotay. Anyway, I've got some fondness of that guy. Robert Beltran, I think might be his name. Yeah, I think that's his name. Yeah, I think he might be a bit of a prickly sort, but anyway.
Interesting.
Anyway, I wish I had some deeper thoughts about Night of the Comet, but I got nothing.
I thought your reference. I got nothing either. You got to give me a bit of time to work up enthusiasm if you want me to talk about Night of the Comet. I thought you might be in there as a means by which to segue into a plug for other stuff that's coming up that you and I are working on. Do you want to take it from there?
Oh, look, I mean, I think we've already talked about this, but I mean, I couldn't really connect it, Simon. I mean, this is a 1984 movie, and our new project where we're doing a podcast is about 1987 movies.
Nicely done.
Folks, if you're getting this podcast, if you're getting it as an audio podcast and not YouTube, just don't worry. During the week, you're going to get a new podcast dropping into your feed, and we'll just drop the episodes in here for the first maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then you'll have to go off and subscribe to the individual feed for it. And we'll put a link to the new YouTube channel for the thing. I'm not sure how we'll do that. But anyway, it's a podcast. It's 1987, best movies ever? No, 1987 best movie year, question mark. That's the name of the podcast, Simon. I knew I'd written it down somewhere.
Rings or just rolls off the tongue. It's a beautiful bit of...
No, it's going to be fine once we actually start recording this thing, which will happen, I think, tomorrow. We're going to record a couple of these. But look, the premise of this one is that 1987 has an absolute, like a monster year for movies. Okay. And it's not that they were monster movies. Okay. But I'm sure there probably is a few movies about monsters in there. Yeah. But like just in terms of a year of just really good, memorable, even if not necessarily good, but certainly interesting movies dropped out through the year. Like we very easily came up with a list of 100 movies from 1987 alone that we're going to go through. So for the next 2 years, week after week, we're going to look at a movie from 1987 and just go a bit deep into it. You know, if you've watched the movie, you'll probably be able to ride along with the podcast a little bit better. But even if, you know, you hear the idea that we're going to talk about The Stepfather and you're like, I don't want to watch The Stepfather, we'll still make it entertaining. Don't worry. It'll be fine.
Of course we will.
But yeah, we'll give you a heads up each week as to what next week's movie is going to be. And it'll be one of two things. Either one, it'll be a movie that you've seen just hundreds of times. Like, you know, Lethal Weapon is a 1987 movie.
Yeah.
The Lost
Raising
Boys.
Arizona. Yeah.
The Untouchables. Yeah.
Untouchables. Stuff we've seen a lot. Or it may be a little gem that has long since been forgotten that we're going to talk about at depth and hopefully get you interested in all over again. So off the top of my head, that might be The Kindred, which we've spoken at length about in the past. Or
which is a pretty early one on our list. So we'll be talking about that in the next couple of weeks. But like The Kindred, I've never seen.
Yep.
But also I will say that the films that we're going to talk about will be films that you'll be able to find quite easily yourself. Either they've been dodgily uploaded to YouTube, it might be they have to rent it for like $1.99 off a store somewhere. It should be easy enough for you to be able to find a lot of these movies. But we'll give you the heads up as to where you can find them.
We want you to be part of the conversation. We want to talk movies with each other, of course, because we really are the most entertaining things in our lives. But we also want to hear from you, the people out there in screen watching land. Are we going to mention what our kickoff film is? Should we let the sizzle keep sizzling or sell the steak?
Oh, no, let's absolutely talk about what it is. So the very first movie we're going to talk about came out on the 1st of January, 1987. It's a film called Withnail and I.
Wow. Which is a film I've seen many times, and I am entirely surprised that it is not on the list of cancelled things at this, given the current climate out there in society. So I'm very keen to talk about, and we'll have to be careful how we talk about it, or we may find ourselves cancelled after the first podcast. But it's got some choice stuff in there.
So Withnail and I, I'm not sure I've seen the entirety of the movie. I think I just saw like parts of it, but maybe I was watching it late at night and I was dozing on the couch a little bit. So for all intents and purposes, this is kind of the first time I've seen the movie. So it's going to be an interesting experience. But Withnail and I, it's the first film we're going to talk about. And I guarantee you, like, even if you come across a stretch of like 2 to 3 weeks where they're films that you're not sort of deeply invested in, once you hit week 4, you're going to be like, oh my God, this movie, and you're going to be back in. There are so many good and beloved and interesting titles we're going to get through over the course of what's probably a 2-year project we're working on now.
2 years? I didn't think of that when I agreed to it, but yeah, you're right, it is 2 years.
Yeah, so as long as we're both alive in 2 years' time, we'll still be doing it.
Keep it light, Jesus Christ. All right, so that wraps up the new Screen Watching. We're still at Screen Watching Podcast on Facebook. We're still at Screen Watching on the YouTube and Threads. And you can still email us at screenwatchingpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, we've got a little bit longer this week, but we had a new podcast to plug. Folks, This has been Screen Watching. We'll be back next week with more screens watched. Yeah. Folks, we'll see you then.